We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis and Mesechet Shekalim. This is Shekalim Daf 21b. The Mishnah here continues B'Tes Vav. Let's say you find a kofitz on the 15th of Nisan, which is the first day of Yontiv, the first day of the Yontiv of Pesach. So again, a kofitz is a large knife. It's used to break the bones of the animal when you are bringing a carbon. So then shochet b'miyad, you can use such a knife to shecht with immediately, meaning you can assume it's been purified because everybody knows you're not allowed to purify it on Yontiv. It was probably taken care of, or most likely taken care of before Yontiv, so it's not a problem. And finally, the Mishnah concludes, Nimtza kshura l'sakin. Let's say you find the kofitz and it's tied to the knife, to a regular knife, harehi kesakin, then it follows whatever the halacha is by the sakin. So if the sakin is considered to be tahor, the kofitz will be considered tahor as well. And now the Gemara is going to address the Mishnah, where the Mishnah had stated that all of the rok in Yerushalayim is tahor, except in the situation where it's in the Shuk HaElyon. And the question is, why is the Shuk HaElyon different than the rest of Yerushalayim? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Avin b'shem Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Rabbi Avin says, in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Kitzron shel Nachrim hayasham. There was launderers, non-Jewish launderers who were there. They operated in the upper marketplace. The reason why the launderers are called Kitzron is because they shrink the clothing. And the idea over here is that the Chachamim said that Nachrim, non-Jews, should be treated like Zavin for everything. So therefore, because of that takana, and because there was a lot of Nachrim there operating these laundries, therefore they said that the rok in that area is going to be Tameh. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Chanina says, Arudos hayunochrin b'Yerushalayim. Arudos are like wild donkeys, and they were killed in Yerushalayim. They were killed by the king in the stadiums of the king. Vayu ole regalim mishtakin b'dam ad arkuvoseyan. And it says that the ole regalim, their legs would be covered in their blood. These are the blood of nevela. So the question is, uvo lifnei chachamim. So they came in front of the chachamim, and they weren't sure, are they tamei or not? Meaning, is dam nevela tamei or not? Now this entire sugya actually appeared earlier in this mesechta in Parak Gimel Halacha Beis, and the Gemara here has the exact same sugya again. V'lo amru lehen davar. So they didn't give them an answer in terms of tumas nevela. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Simon says in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Maisa b'pirda mishal beis Rabbi. There was a story with the mule in the house of Rabbi, shemesa, that it died. V'tiaru estomeh mishum nevela, and they said it's pure. In other words, there's no tumas nevela. The dam of a nevela is not tameh. Rabbi Lazar shal Rabbi Simon. So Rabbi Lazar asked Rabbi Simon, ad kama. So he said, until how much blood? In other words, is there a certain amount of blood where if you reach that amount, it actually is tameh? So the Gemara says, V'lo agive, he didn't pay any attention to him. Some of the girsa, V'lo ashkach be, he didn't pay any attention to the question. So Rabbi Simon did not answer. Shal Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. So then he asked the same question to Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Amar Lei said to him, ad revius tahar. If it's until a revius halug of blood, then it's tahar. Yoser mikan tameh. If it's more than that, it's tameh. And the Gemara continues, Uvash le Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer was angry. Lo chazer le Rabbi Simon shmua. So that Rabbi Simon did not give him an answer when he asked him the question. And the Gemara continues, Rabbevi have a Yosef. Rabbevi was sitting. Masni hadenov. Then he said over this halacha that again the dam nevel is tar. Amar le Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna ad kam amar le. So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna said, until how much did they say that it's tar? Ad revius tar yoser mikan tameh. Did they say until a revius is tar and more than that is tameh? Uvat bey. And so then Rabbevi, when he was given this question, he kicked him. So Amar le Rabbi Zreika. So Rabbi Zreika said to Rabbevi, begin to have a shah loch at boit bey. Just because he's asking you a question, you're going to kick him. So Amar le, so he said back to him, begin to lo havis daiti bi. The reason why I did that was because my mind wasn't settled, and I really couldn't answer the question. The Amar Rabbi Chanin, because Rabbi Chanin said, V'hayu chayecha teluim lecha mineged. Pasuk talks in the Tochacha, it says your life is going to be hanging in front of you. What does that refer to? Zeshu lokeach lochitin l'shana. That refers to a person who buys his wheat for the whole year. It means to say that the person doesn't have a field of his own. He has to go and buy wheat in order to have wheat. So he's always worried. He's always worried that he's not going to have the proper amount of food. Ufachadito laila v'yomam. The pasuk goes on to say you'll be afraid night and day. Zeshu lokeach min hasidki. That refers to someone who buys from the sidki. The sidki was the person who sold, again, a little bit of grain at a time. You're always worried maybe you won't have grain. Similarly, the pasuk says you're not going to trust your life. This refers to somebody who buys bread from the baker. Again, it's all the same idea. Person doesn't know whether he's going to have a source for food. And so the Gemara says, Rabbevi says, I rely on the palter, so my mind is not settled. And that's why, since my mind was not settled, I ended up kicking you in response to that question. So the Gemara then says, "My Kadon, what is the final halacha here regarding dam nevela?" Hey, Rabbi Yoshua ben Pesora. Rabbi Yoshua ben Pesora testified, "Al dam nevelos shehu tahor." He said that when it comes to dam nevelos, it is in fact tahor. So the Gemara says, "Mahu tar." What does it mean tar? Maybe it means as follows: tar milahachshir halitmos metame. Maybe it just means it's tar in the sense that it's not considered one of the liquids that prepares food to be mekabel tumah. In order for food to be mekabel tumah, it has to touch liquid, and maybe it just meant that dam nevela is tar in the sense that it can't be machshir, it can't prepare food to be mekabel tumah. But maybe in fact, dam nevela is tameh. So the Gemara says you can't say that because Ta'amon Ta'aninon, because we learned in a Mishnah over there, Dam Hasheretz. The Mishnah is talking here about the blood of a sheretz, Mitame Kivasaro. The blood of a sheretz is Tameh just like the flesh of the sheretz. So, and then the Mishnah says, Mitame ve'eno machshir. It's mitame and it's not machshir. Ve'en lanu kayotze bo. And we have nothing similar. In other words, there's no other example of something that is tameh and is not machshir. So if there's no other example of something that's tameh and not machshir, so when it comes to dam nevela, it can't be that what we mean to say is that it's tameh and it's not machshir, because there's no other example of that. So therefore, it must really mean that dam nevelos is actually tameh. So the Gemara says not necessarily. It could be that the Mishnah by Dam Sheretz, the Mishnah over there is saying there's nothing similar to Dam Sheretz in the sense of the measurement of the amount that is Tameh. The halach is by Sheretz that the basar of the Sheretz, the flesh of the Sheretz, and the dam of the Sheretz are both Metame at very small shiurim. And there's nothing else similar to that. Avol damo Metame Kivasaro. And some have the girsa here instead of avol is shed damo Metame Kivasaro. In other words, the point of the Gemara is, again, when it comes to sheretz, the dam and the basar are both metame at the same kind of shear, meaning at a very small shear, and there's nothing similar to sheretz in that regard. But again, it could very well be that by dam nevela we have no proof one way or the other. It could be by dam nevela what it meant was it's tar milahachshir, but it is tameh. So the Gemara now says, Amar Rav Yossi says, Pligi b'trein amoraim. This is actually a machlokas amoraim. Chad amar tameh. One says that dam nevela, if it's a revius, it is tameh. V'chad amar tar. One says it's completely tar. Man damar tameh ke Rabbi Yehuda. The one who says it's tameh, that follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Uman damar tar ke Rabbi Yoshua ben Pesora. The one who says it's tar, that follows Rabbi Yoshua ben Pesora, again, that it's completely tar. And now when the Gemara here is referencing Rabbi Yehuda, that the one who says dam nevela is tameh follows Rabbi Yehuda, that refers to a Mishnah in Edios, where Rabbi Yehuda says that this is one of the issues that Beis Hillel is machmiran. That Beis Hillel holds, again, that dam nevela is tameh. Of course, we hold like Beis Hillel, and not like Beis Shammai. So the Gemara concludes, Amar le Rav Avduma de min Nechusa. So Rav Avduma from Nechusa said to Rabbi Yossi, again, Rabbi Yossi is the one who said the two Amoraim argue, and the one who says tameh follows Rabbi Yehuda. V'yos, that is correct. The one who says tameh does follow Rabbi Yehuda. To Rabbi Yehuda moraina devei nesiya have, because Rabbi Yehuda was the one who issued rulings for the house of the Nasi, meaning the house of Rebbe. And what did we just say before? We said before that when it came to the mule of Rebbe, they only said the dam nevela was tar because it was less than a revius, but if it would have been more than a revius, it would have been tameh. And the Gemara continues that the two dots, again quoting the Mishnah, kalarokin v'chulu, again it said all of the spit in Yerushalayim is tar except for if it's in the Shukah Elyon. Gemara says, Lo chen amar Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina. This doesn't seem like what Rabbi Avo said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina. Lo gazra ala roken shabi Yerushalayim. He said there is no gezerah on the roken Yerushalayim. So why in the Shukah Elyon is there an exception? Gemara says the same thing it said at the top of the Amid. Ho'itzmar aleh, because it was said on this. Rabbi Avin b'shem Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Avin said in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Kitzron shel nachrim hayasham. Again, there was the laundry, the launderers of non-Jews. They were there, and as we said before, the non-Jews are treated midrabanan like zavin. And the Gemara continues now with the two dots, and this is in reference to Rabbi Yossi's opinion in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi makes a distinction between finding the rok during a regular time of the year, during non-holiday times, and during the regal when it's the holiday. He says that if it's not during the holiday, so then if you find it in the middle of the road, you have to assume it's tameh. If you find it at the side of the road, you assume it's tar. On the holiday, it's exactly the opposite. If you find it in the middle of the road, it's tar. If you find it at the side of the road, it's tameh. And the Gemara now explains. B'shari Yemos Hashana, during other times of the year, when it's not the regal, hatmei and mahalchin shibolas, the people who are tameh walk right in the middle of the road. That's why you assume that if the rok is in the middle of the road, it's tameh. The people who are tar, they walk along the sides of the road. They're the minority. V'hatmein, going with the gears of the gra, v'hatmein mahalchin stam. The people who are tameh, the majority, they just walk. They're not careful. V'hatahorim omrim lahem paroshu. And then the people who are tar, they're the ones who say separate because they have to be careful. They're the minority. B'shas ha-regel, now during the times of the regel, it's the opposite. Ha-tahorim malchin shibolis. The tahorim walk right in the middle of the road. That's why the roke in the middle of the road is considered tahor. V'atamein malchim min atzad. The people who are tamei, they walk along the sides, so the roke at the sides is tamei. Ha-tahorim mahalchin stam. In this situation, since the tahorim are the majority, they walk stam, they're not so careful. V'atamein omrim lahem parosho, and it's the tmeim who have to be careful, they're the ones who say separate. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, the Mishnah said, V'chol ha-kelim hanimtsoim v'chulu, it said all kelim that are found in Yerushalayim, so if it's on the way down to the mikveh, you assume it's tamei. So the Gemara says, Lochein Amar Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. That's not what Rabbi Avo said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He said, Lo gazru ala kelim sheb Yerushalayim. He said they don't make a gezer on kelim in Yerushalayim. We don't say they're tamei. Why does the Mishnah say it's tamei? So the Gemara answers, Mikevon shenimtzu derech yerida lebeis hatvila nasu ochiach. In this particular case, since you find it literally on the way down to the Beis HaTzvila, it's already a proof that obviously this kli was tamei, and in this particular case, we do say tamei. Now, the Mishnah had also said that there were certain kelim that are used for Beis HaKvaros that they're certainly tamei. So the Gemara now says, Abba Shaul hayakore osan tziporin. Abba Shaul called what the Mishnah calls the meritza, which was used for the stones of the Beis HaKvaros. It was a utensil used for the avonim. He used to call it a tziporin. So the Gemara explains the different terminologies. Man damar tziporin shaya domel tziporin. The one who called it a tziporin was because it was similar to the fingernail of a person. That's how it was shaped. Man damar meritza, the one who called it a meritza, shemeritza es ha'evin lebeis hakvaros. It was a tool that got the stones to quickly get to the Beis hakvaros where they needed to be. And the Mishnah said, kofitz v'chulu, it said that if you have a situation where a kofitz is tied to a sakin, so the halacha was that on the 14th, the sakin is tahor. You can assume that it was purified to be used for Karban Pesach. Kofitz, if you find the kofitz on the 14th, there's not necessarily a use for a kofitz on the 14th because you're not allowed to break the bones of the Karban Pesach anyway. But if the kofitz is tied to a sakin, so then you give it the same status as the sakin and it is tahor. So the Gemara says, Tani was taught, hasakin keshura law harezu kamosa. This is only true if the kofitz is tied to the sakin. Then we follow the sakin, that becomes the ikar. But if the sakin is keshura law, let's say the knife is the one that's tied to the kofitz, so then harezu kamosa. Then the sakin follows the kofitz. And just like we say the kofitz is tamei, in this case we're going to say the sakin is tamei. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, paroches shenitmis bevlad hatumah. Let's say the paroches in the Beis HaMikdash, the kernel in the Beis HaMikdash, becomes tamei bevlad hatumah. What that means is it becomes tamei from mashkin, which are a rishon, which really is only tamei midrabanan. Mashkin are only matame kelim on a drabanan level. So in this case, you could be a little more lenient. Matvilin osa bifnim, you can be tovel the paroches within the azara. Umachnisan osa miyad, you can bring it back in immediately to its rightful place. Now, on the other hand, let's say it becomes tamei with an avatoma. In other words, let's say the zav, the roke of the zav, or something like that, which is considered an avatoma. So those things, it's tamei midoraisa. So then matvilin osa bachutz, then you have to immerse it outside of the azara. V'shotchen osa bechel mipnei shitzricha harif shemesh, and then they would spread it out in the chel, which was again an area outside the azara, because you needed to wait anyway until nightfall for it to become totally pure. And the Mishnah says, now if it was a brand new paroches, they used to spread it out on the roof of the portico in the Beis HaMikdash, because that way the people would see it and they would admire that it was made, and it was made beautifully. The Mishnah continues, Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer Mishum Rav Shimon ben Askan. Rav Shimon Gamliel says in the name of Rav Shimon ben Askan, Paroches ovia tefach al shivim ushtayim nimim nereges. It was, the paroches was the thickness of a tefach. It was made with 72 threads, and al kol nima v'nima chavdal chutin, and each thread actually contained 24 threads. Archa mem amma, it was 40 amos long. V'rach v'chaf, it was 20 amos wide. Umishmonim ushtayim ribo haisa nasis, and it was made from 820,000 dinar. Ushtayim osin b'chol shana. They used to make a new one. They used to make 2 new ones every year. V'shalosh meyos kohanim matvilin osa. It was so heavy that it took 300 kohanim in order to immerse it. And the Gemara here addresses the Mishnah, which said that each thread of the paroches was actually 24 threads. And the Gemara brings a drasha for this from Sukkim. Ilu amar chut echad. If the pasuk just called it a chut, that would be 1 thread. Kafel l'shnayim. It says kafel, that's 2. Shazur, then it uses the word shazur, l'shlosha, that would be 3. Mashzar, but the Torah uses the word mashzar, that means to double the shazur. L'shisha, that means it is 6 threads in every thread. And arba, and there are 4 different kinds of threads that were used for the paroches, that's 4 times 6. Mikan ha'esrim v'arba, that comes out to 24. Gemara now brings an alternative view. Tani, it was taught, shloshim ushtayim, it's actually a total of 32 threads. Ilu amar chut echad, if it just said chut, it would be 1. Kafel l'shnayim, kafel means that you double it to 2. Shazur la'arba, shazur actually means you double the 2 to 4. Mashzar l'shmona, mashzar means you double the 4 to 8. And so now you have arba, you have a total of 4 different kinds of threads times 8. Mikan hatzlasin utrain, therefore it comes out to 32. Now we have another view, Tana, the Brisa taught, Arboim Ushmona, the threads were actually 48 each. Ilu Amar Chut Echad, if it just said Chut, it would be 1. Kafel L'Shnaim, the word Kafel indicates 2. Kliya L'Shlosha, the word Kliya indicates 3. Shazur L'Shisha, Shazur, you double the 3 to 6. Mashzar L'Shnei Masar, the word Mashzar, you double the 6 to 12. Arba, and again, there are 4 different kinds of threads that were used, so it's 4 times 12. Mikan ho arboim utmanya, from here you see it's 48 threads in each thread. Kasav Echaromer, now the Gemara says, one pasuk says Maaseh Rokem, that the way it was made was called Rokem, that was the way it was woven. V'chasav Echaromer Maaseh Choshev, and the other pasuk says Maaseh Choshev. So what do these terms mean? So the Gemara says, Maaseh Rokem parts of Echad. When the Torah uses the word Maaseh Rokem, it means on one side you see a face. Meaning, if you were to hold up the curtain, you would see a design on one side of the curtain, but not on the other side. And Maaseh Choshev Shnei Partsufos. Maaseh Choshev means you see the design or the face on both sides. But the Gemara says even this is a little bit of a machlokus. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, there's a machlokus, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia on this issue. Chad Omer Maaseh Rokem, one says that what does it mean Maaseh Rokem? Ari mikan v'ari mikan. Now here also we have a slightly different girsa, and we'll take a look over here at the Gra, Hachi Garsin, and here's the proper text. Chad Omer Maaseh Rokem, one of the Amoroim says, what does it mean Maaseh Rokem? Ari mikan v'cholok mikan. It means to say you have a lion on one side of the curtain, and then on the other side it's blank, there's no design at all. And Maaseh Choshev, what does Maaseh Choshev mean? Ari mikan, v'ari mikan. It means you see the design of the Ari, of the lion, as an example, you see it on both sides of the curtain. The Charna Amar, the other opinion is Maaseh Rokem. What does it mean Maaseh Rokem? Ari mikan v'ari mikan. And that means you see a line on both sides. In other words, the point is it's one design, and you see like a mirror image of the design on the other side. And Maaseh Choshev, what does it mean Maaseh Choshev? Ari mikan v'nesher mikan. There it actually means you see a lion on one side, and you see a nesher, a kind of bird, on the other side. The point is you see different designs on each side. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, B'shmonim Ushtayim Ribo Haisanasis V'chulu. The Mishnah said at the end, in order to immerse this thing, you needed 300 Kohanim. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bizna b'shem Shmuel. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bizna says in the name of Shmuel, Guzma, that's just an exaggeration. Doesn't really mean you need that many people. It's just an exaggerated amount. Gemara says there's a similar thing we find in the Mishnah in Talmud. Tamon Taninan, we learned in the Mishnah over there. Pa'amim hayaleh keshlosh meos kor. Talks about the afer of the karbanos. Sometimes it was 300 kor. Rabbi Yossi Bei Rabbi Bon b'shem Shmuel Guzma, same idea. Rabbi Yossi Bei Rabbi says in the name of Shmuel. Rabbi Yossi Bei Rabbi Bon says in the name of Shmuel. It's just an exaggeration. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Besar Kodshe Kodshim. Let's say you have meat from karbanos that are Kodshe Kodshim. Shenitma, and that meat becomes tameh. Bein bi'avatuma, bein b'vladatuma. It doesn't matter if it comes tummy from an avatuma. Doesn't matter if it comes tummy from a rishon l'tuma. Bein b'fnim, bein b'chutz. Doesn't matter if it becomes tummy within the azara or outside of the azara. Beishamai omrim, beishamai say hakol yisaref b'fnim. In all of these cases, the besar kodshe kodshim has to be burned inside the azara. Chutz mishenitma bi'av hatuma b'chutz. With one exception, if it becomes tummy with an avatuma outside of the azara, so in that case already we're not going to bring it into the azara in order to burn it. Beis Hillel Omer, Beis Hillel say the exact opposite. Hakol yisaref b'chutz. You always burn it outside of the azara. Chutz mishenitma bevlad hatuma b'fnim. Except if it was tameh with a vlad hatuma in the most lenient sense, and it's already inside, then you don't take it out. And we will continue with the Mishnah in the next video on Daf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph.